Okay, so I am really excited to introduce this next guest. He is a certified strength and conditioning coach and Enneagram coach who is passionate about sharing the beliefs of fitness, nutrition, and personal growth to improve mental health. After a couple of breakups in 2017, he discovered that relationships play a big role in our mental health and found the answer to self-awareness through understanding his Enneagram challenger personality type. Since that time, he has been educating others about their Enneagram personality types, attachment styles, and love languages on the Believe, Be Real, Be Bold podcast for authentic dating. Please welcome Dave Glaser.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I feel like I should have been applauding in the background. I don't know. Did I miss my cue on that?
So, okay, I'm really excited for you to be here for multiple reasons. One, we are attachment theory nerds. Like I'm not a doctor or a counselor or anything, but I've just connected with attachment theory on so many levels. And then I am also an Enneagram nerd.
Jared, how are you doing on the audio over there?
Yeah, Leanna's pausing out on us.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I checked my internet connection. It's solid over here.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, I think are you in your office?
Yes.
Oh, I think you're gonna have a bandwidth problem trying to do Zoom and Zencaster. But we can try again.
Well, well, if it does it again and we can't see each other, we'll just cut Zoom. Okay. So what did you guys last hear?
Pretty much right after the intro where you were talking about how excited you were.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So yeah, we heard basically nothing of your last statement.
Okay, so basically, I'm really excited you're here because we are attachment theory nerds, and I am an Enneagram nerd, and I'm trying to turn Jared into an Enneagram nerd. So I went through a divorce about 4.5 years ago, and then found attachment theory, found Enneagram, and I just think it's such and love languages too. We've done an episode on that, but I think it's just such a fascinating thing to learn to understand ourselves better so that we can show up better in our relationships. So just tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, I'm just curious how you got into Enneagram.
That's a long story, so I'll try to make it short. But after about 7 years building my business as a personal trainer and a strength coach for jiu-jitsu athletes and soccer athletes, I started to understand that my clients were being held back by their limiting beliefs. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'll never do X, Y, and Z, fill in the blank. And what I found through the Enneagram for myself was a tool of self-awareness to identify which limiting beliefs were coming up for me based on my tendencies and my core beliefs and desires through the Enneagram typing system. And so I started bringing up the conversation of the Enneagram with my clients in sessions. And the further we pushed that envelope with our strength and conditioning and personal growth and self-awareness through the Enneagram, the more I understood how relationships were coming into play in holding my clients back from reaching their fitness, body composition, and sports performance goals.
Interesting. Okay. So then how did that then change you?
Well, like yourself, I went through a couple of breakups in 2017. I never really expected to be single again in a long-term relationship that I was in. That one suddenly ended, and then I tried to date again, got into a short-term exclusive relationship right after that. Excuse me, that one ended for other reasons. And that's when I found attachment theory to kind of weave into the Enneagram. And I started to propel myself even further forward, peeling back the layers of the onion of my own identity and my own self, understanding more about the limiting beliefs and past patterns that were holding me back in my relationships. And then I decided, okay, well, if if I'm going to leave a legacy, or if I'm going to share this knowledge with other people, I figured I might as well do that through a podcast. And I
Oh, that's
started
so cool.
I started the podcast in early 2018. I knew a couple of dating experts here in Denver, and I sought them out. One of whom I matched with on Tinder, and that's how we got to know each other. And the
Oh,
other,
wow.
the other, I slid up into her DMs on Facebook. So we've been friends ever since.
That's awesome. So what is, like, I think probably a lot of my listeners have no idea what the Enneagram is. So can you just kind of break it down for us a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. It's centuries old. Priests in Europe used to use the Enneagram as a tool to help their congregation come together closer as a community through understanding themselves and others better. So it was a personal growth tool back then. And yeah, much like a lot of other personality typing system, it goes in waves. So it's really popular right now. And you'll find a lot of Instagram handles that are focused on the Enneagram. Those are great tools to help us become introduced. But what I've found about the Enneagram for myself is that it deepens my self awareness to the point of shadow work. And that shadow is including the ego and things that hold us back, like those limiting beliefs. It's the layers of the onion that are so close to the core that are probably why people shy away from it, are probably going to shed the most tears when you slice through that onion.
Mm-hmm. What are the, so what, so for the Enneagram, right, there's 9 different personality types, but then within the 9 different personality types, there's wings, there's like tide numbers, and then there's like the growth part of it. Can you just break down just the 9 types?
Sure, I'll simplify it for you guys. That's how I like to communicate about the Enneagram, is keeping it in simple, digestible, understanding terms. So we have 9 types, and it begins with the reformer, type 1, which is simply put, they love right and wrong, and they like to be fair, and they like to be treated fair. Then we have the type 2, the helper, and they seek love in ways of fulfilling themselves. So they give other people help to receive love in return.
Mm.
And that's a hard thing to look at for the 2. They're one of the personality types on the Enneagram that does not like looking at their shadow. But I'll get more into why the 2 is so important for me in a moment. Then we have the achiever, type 3. They seek love by doing and accomplishing and being the best at everything. Then we have the individualist, type 4, and they want to be recognized for their uniqueness in the world and the gift that they bring to their community and the world at large. Next up, we have the investigator, type 5, which I resonate with a lot. They like to dive down the rabbit hole on YouTube. They'll sit in a corner of their home for months reading books on attachment theory. I almost made you spit out your drink there. And then up next, we have the type 6, the loyalist. And one of those first 2 guests that I invited on my podcast is a loyalist. So we joke all the time about her what if scenarios that are going through her mind. That's how the biggest tendency shows up for the type 6, the loyalist. They have played out all scenarios regarding COVID. Okay, this is how it ends.
Yeah.
But they have 10,000 different ways to get there.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite personality types, the enthusiast, is type 7, and they invented FOMO, fear of missing out, where they will say yes to everything so that they receive love in return. They don't want to miss out, and that's how they receive love. And then I'm a challenger, so type 8. This is probably, I'll stay shallow for now, and then we can get a little deeper on my own personality type. But we're known as the Mack truck full of marshmallows. And I'm a wing 7, so we'll touch on that a little bit, but aptly described as enthusiastic about challenging other people. So as a personal trainer, that's why I gravitated to my career path, because I get really amped up and excited to coach other people to help reach their goals, to make personal transformation. That's when I'm at my best. And then finally, we'll round it out with the type 9, the peacemaker, who's kind of a mama bear in the family. She might okay, handle this conflict in this corner of the room at a Thanksgiving dinner, only to just slide over to the other conflict that's going on at the other end of the table and resolve all that conflict just to keep the peace. That's how they receive love.
I love that. What a great explanation of that. So Jared, did you take your test?
I did.
Okay, so I took the Enneagram test like 4 years ago, but I wanted to see if things had kind of changed, like if my personality had changed, and I bought one for Jared and made him take it. So just for my listeners, if you guys want to see like what your personality type is, you can go to enneagraminstitute.com. It's $12 to pay for the ready test, and it's 144 questions. If you're like me, a 7.
I knew it. I knew it.
They say for the test, they're like, it's going to take you 40 minutes. And I'm like, I can knock that out in 20. So anyway.
And did you?
It takes oh yeah, for sure. So it takes about like 20 minutes to do it. But anyway, so Jared, do you want to say what your personality type is?
So really interestingly, when I've done it in the past, I've been a 2. This time I tied for 2 and 7 as my top, which was really interesting.
We're gonna answer one of your questions with that tie, the 2 and the 7.
Okay, I'm excited.
Jared, what was your number after that?
Oh man, see now I forget. Wait, I can look it up. Keep talking.
Okay, well, you know what's ironic is, so in the past, I tied for 4 and 8. So 4.5 years ago, I tied as a 4 and 8. So I must be a 7 wing 8.
It's possible, yeah.
But yesterday I tied as Jared, you're gonna die, a 7-2.
Really?
Yeah, which is very surprising to me because I feel like I've never connected with a 2. Because I don't feel like I am like always ready to go help other people. I actually shy away from that because I feel like I get stuck in that. Like I get stuck in like, so maybe I'm like a healthy 2, or like, I don't know.
That's actually very possible that you're a healthy 2. And go on, I interrupted you, but we're gonna get into this, guys.
So then my next one was so funny. I tied for 8, which was my original personality type. So I'm just curious like, what your thoughts are on like why. So Jared and I apparently are the same person.
Yeah, what the hell is that? So I'm 7-2 tie, and then 4-3 tie, which was interesting.
Okay. Yeah. So Jared's okay. All right. This is going to be so much fun, guys. I want to dive into you guys specifically, and I'll reflect back a little bit about my personality type to help benefit both of you. All right. So let's cover our main personality types. We went through all 9. Let's touch on the wings really quick. And Jared, we'll use you as an example. So, excuse me. If you had a top score of a 2 and then you tied on 3 and 4, well, we're going to have to research a little bit more on your wings because you could be known as a 2 wing 3 or a 2 wing 4 because the types that are on either side of your main type are your wings. And you can swing back and forth between the two. Like if I'm a 8 wing 7, I'm enthusiastic about challenging people. But if I'm an 8 wing 9 at certain points, I'm going to resolve conflict better from my challenging standpoint. I'll challenge others to resolve conflict better, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that covers what a wing is. It's a type on either side of your main type that you resonate with most.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
What do you do for work, Jared? What do you do professionally?
So professionally, I'm like it's interesting. I work with college students, so I work on, like in a counseling like capacity. I'm not like a licensed clinician, so I'm kind of like a problem solver. I put out fires. I also like do health and wellness education, so I'm like building programs, and I get really excited about creating new things and like bringing teams of people together to do something cool for students that, you know, or like do better for our students and those kinds of things. So that's awesome. The thing. Like when I was taking the test, I was having I had a lot of trouble answering a lot of the items because I'm like, well, am I answering it from like how I show up at work or how I show up in relationships? Because there's
Yes.
some differences there. Yeah, I know. I
Yeah.
tried to sort of split the middle, but I don't know.
Right. Okay, so do you get spread thin at work?
Yes.
Okay. So I would guess that at this point in your life, you're a two wing three. So the achiever might actually resonate with you more so than the individualist on the other side. Because you're accomplishing tasks at work, you gravitate or you're attracted to work environments that are very challenging, and you want to accomplish this task to maybe receive praise at work or validation or appreciation.
Yeah, that's like 100% true.
Yeah, 100%. Got it. Okay, so Jared, you're a two wing three right now in your life. There's other points in your life that you might be a two wing. I guess it's not possible that you're a two wing four, but we'll get to that here in a second about how you could be seeing yourself as an individualist at this time. Sound
Okay.
good?
Yeah.
And then up next, let's talk about both of you as being either mistyped between the 2 and the 7. These are two personality types that get confused with each other all the time because they behave very, very similar. They say yes to everything. Right, Jared?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You say yes. You say yes to projects at work. You say yes to family members asking you out to dinner when you know that you need rest, right?
A little bit. I'm like getting better. See, that was the other problem I was having because I was like, well, like 5 or 10 years ago, like I would have picked this one, but like now I'm not so sure, because I'm like, it's weird to be in the process of like being in therapy and like getting healthy and like recognizing some of this stuff. And so I think I was more of like I definitely had more like self-sacrificing sort of martyr two in me like a long time ago than I do now. Like Leanna always like laughs when we talk about me as a two because she's like, you say no to stuff all the time. Like, like there's like sometimes where I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. So
That's great.
so it's like I'm at this point of like of I don't know, like things changing in that way for me. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for your listeners, when they go to take the test, I want them to put themselves in the perspective of a 20-year-old version of themselves. Because that's when our personality most of the time gets solidified for the rest of our lives. But as we get to these personality types, we'll show you how they move around the crown of the Enneagram to become more like other types. It's very fluid, and that's why I love it.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so the 2 and the 7 get mistyped a lot. They say yes to everything. The 7, the enthusiast, says yes to everything so that they don't miss out, so that they can be with people that they love.
Mm-hmm.
The type 2 says yes to everything because they have a very hard time setting boundaries. Which one resonates with you more, Leanna?
I mean, definitely the 7. I feel like I don't have a hard time setting boundaries just because I think I have that 7 wing 8. And I'm like, I don't really feel like I'm a people pleaser. Like if something's happening that I don't like, I'll be like, I don't like that. Like I'll just kind of say it how it is. But what's interesting about the 2, because I was reading like the levels of healthiness or whatever, I do in relationships tend to feel like I've had to really work hard to ask for what I need. And I'm afraid that if I ask for what I need, it's going to be too much. And
now we're talking about attachment theory.
I know.
Are you an anxious attached?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
That word being too much, that phrase being too much is quintessential anxiously attached.
Mm-hmm.
And why I love layering the Enneagram with attachment theory is for that exact reason. Is it helps us understand ourselves so much better, that there's underlying reasons why we would attach to a partner in a certain way, and it comes from our childhood. The Enneagram is solidified in our late childhood, early teen years, because we have all 9 types within us, and that's why it's so fluid around the crown of the Enneagram. but it becomes solidified in us with, say, like an instance or an experience that we have in our late childhood, teen years, where, okay, wow, how do I protect myself against
Hmm.
this from happening again in the future? And that's the difference
Mm-hmm.
between the two, but they're so important to layer together for the exact reason why you were just talking about um,
Mhm.
being too much in a relationship.
Well,
Mhm.
it's so funny, Lana, because like as you were just starting to say that, I had this like moment of revelation of like, because I'm kind of an avoidant too. I think I'm like anxious avoidant, but I'll say no to stuff because I know like once I'm there, I'm gonna get sort of so absorbed in the people pleasing part of me that I'm like, okay, I have to sort of show up in whatever way this person is expecting me or wanting me to show up. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
what's really hard for me in dating relationships is I like lose track of where I am. And it's so easy for me to figure out and intuit how the other person needs me to show up and just do that. And then eventually, if I don't catch that, over time, I'm like, well, this relationship is a lot of work. And like I'm tired, and then I kind of like just bail.
Very well said, Jared. I couldn't have said it better myself, as I'm a fearful avoidant, which is a lot like anxious avoidant, but for different reasons. And what you said in there is very, very much so from the helper's lens. Um, there are three subtypes for each of our personality types. There's sexual, there's social, and then there's self-preservation. And these are three reasons why we show up as different types across the Enneagram. And what I
Mm,
hear is, I hear you as a social too, showing up like the hostess with the mostess, and then we just get burnt out.
mm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you're going into a social situation, you show up like others expect you to be.
Yeah.
And that's really energy draining.
Yeah, and it's interesting though because I think like part of me, like the achiever in me, right? Like I'm good at that. And I can like, and so I can like, like Leanna and I have talked on the podcast before about how, in group social situations, I can kind of like, you know, keep everybody sort of comfortable and having a good time and whatever. And so there's some part of me that feels validation from being good at that and like being of service to my group of friends trying to have a good time in that way. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's times where there's a weird shadow side thing that comes in there too that
Sure.
I don't know. I'm really curious to hear you more talk about shadow side, but like at some
Sure.
point, yeah.
Yeah, what happens when you don't get that validation?
In like the kind of group setting that we're talking about, or just like in relationships more.
Both, because they're going to be so similar.
Hmm. What happens when I don't get that validation? Oh, I'm
What
like,
what happens when I say the word resentment?
oh yeah, like I think so. Here's how I relate to resentment: is I think when I'm so busy sort of doing for the other person, and I lose track of like my authentic self, and then but I like some part of me is like wanting them to see it, to like see through the performance that I'm doing, and when they don't, I get like really resentful, or I just get
Mhm.
resentful from like, gosh, I've done all of this work and I've like put myself out 20 different ways to listen to this person, help them feel better, whatever. Um, and yet I'm not getting the things I need. And like, yeah, resentment is a big thing that happens for me in
Mhm.
relationships. Yeah.
Yeah, I can resonate with that a lot, definitely. And let's just touch on the shadow just for a moment since you brought it up. But if we were to look at our shadow and understand that our partner and our friends and our social group are not mind readers,
Hmm.
then we're going to discover a lot more about ourselves in the way that we show up with others. And that's where the resentment comes from, is because why can't they understand my needs? Why can't they meet my needs without me expressing them or asking for them all the time?
Yeah.
Does that resonate?
Yeah, totally. Well, and it's like, it's interesting because I think the performer part of me, or the helper part of me, is like that comes from a fear place of like, that if I just show up the way I am, that people aren't going to like want or love that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's, it's true. Like I remember talking to my therapist years ago about this, like there's a me that's like on stage, like putting on a nice show. And then there's like real me that's like backstage, like peeking through the curtain, like out at the audience, being like, why aren't they seeing like me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let me just jump in really quick, and then we'll just move on. For
Okay.
the benefit of the Enneagram, overall, the goal is to show us what mask we wear and teach us how to remove it, so that that authentic person who's peering out from behind the curtains backstage can come through and be loved for exactly who you are.
Oh, that helps me so much, because especially when I was thinking about the enthusiast, I literally had the thought, like right after I took the test, I'm like, well, that's like a mask I wear. I literally
Uh-huh.
like thought that. So that's very cool to know.
Okay. I want to go back to me.
Okay, let's do. You didn't want to miss out, did you?
Okay, so Jared, if Jared's a 2 and the 7 is like the mask that he puts on, am I a 7 and the 2 is the mask that I put on?
Very unlikely. Let's talk about your 4 and your 8 test.
Okay.
From the context of a 2, the helper. So you mentioned earlier that there are growth points and stress points for each of the personality types. For my
Yes.
example, I'm an 8. So when I'm healthiest, when I'm at my best, I look and appear more like a healthy 2, the helper. Which is why this conversation is going to be so beneficial for all three of us, because we can relate to each other in that fact. Like, when I'm at my best, I become a lot like Jared when he's healthy, and Jared when he's healthy. But I'm seeing a lot of 7 from you. So, but we're going to figure that out here in a second. When I'm at my worst, I'm more like the 5, the investigator, where I need to connect all of the dots on all of the intuitive things that are coming up for me. I'd got to find out the truth about that. I need to find out the truth about that. And when I'm at my worst, I show up more like the 5, and that's my stress point. For the 2, your stress point is much like the unhealthy version of an 8. And the unhealthy version of me, so I'll speak from my perspective in it, and if it resonates with you, then you might be at times in your life stressed going towards the 8 if you're a 2. So my archetype when I'm at my worst is a lot like Donald Trump. And I like to put the worst of my shadow out in the front. Like, I'm going to name it. My shadow is Donald Trump, and he's assumed to be a type 8. But if we look at the overall mental health, emotional health, physical health, we're at the bottom rungs of the optimal level of health there. Would you agree?
Yes.
Oh, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We are not Trump supporters, so
Right.
feel free. Yeah.
And we're not making this a political conversation. We're making this a mental health conversation.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Totally. Yes.
I need the reminder as the 8 to stay far away from that shadow. So it inspires me to do the work to get closer to my growth point, which is the 2. When the
So what is
2
the shadow of the 8? Like, is it like, what are the characteristics?
controlling, got to be owning everything, got to be like the empowered leader, but not in a good way. A lot like, do as I say right now or else. So if I see that coming up in my relationships, that's me pushing other people away with my avoidant attachment style. And that's why it's so important. Jared was talking about this earlier about his anxious avoidant, to understand that these things are interwoven, and that we're not compartmentalized Enneagram over here, attachment style over here. They're more like this. And I'm interlacing my fingers there. So we were talking about the 2 though. So the 2, when they're at their stress point, go towards an 8. And that would be very, very draining energetically. And it would be very, very frustrating for a 2 who's like possessive, manipulative, controlling at their worst to get people to love them. Why don't you see me? Why don't you read my mind? Why don't you show up for me, meet my needs without me asking? That's the shadowy side of a 2.
Mm.
Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that might possibly be why you typed it as an 8 at some point in your life.
Okay.
Now let's go to your growth point as a 2. This will
Okay.
help Jared too. Jared, why you typed equally on the 3 and the 4 is because when the 2 is at their best, they move across the Enneagram towards the 4. That's their growth point. Where the 2 wants to show up and help others in their unique way in this world.
Okay. Yeah.
And so your profession, you're helping college students reach their true potential by achieving things at work that you're asked to do and you can't say no to. So every time you achieve, you're serving both your employers and your leaders and your community of college students in your own unique way in the world.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's
then
definitely like that feels like the healthiest like expression of yeah, like how I show up at work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then the mask comes off for you because when you're serving these college students and you see them reach their true potential or their potential at where they're at in their life right now, you don't need that external validation because that validation comes from you internally.
100%. Yeah.
So does the growth point and the stress point resonate with you as a 2?
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
And Leanne, does that resonate with you?
I think I'm not sure the 2 stress point resonates with me.
How about your wing?
I think the 3?
No, your
Or
7 wing 8.
7 wing 8. I feel like that resonates with me more. Like definitely like I think when I'm unhealthy, I like can become a little narcissistic, you
Me too.
know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like a little bit about me and, you know, like, yeah, probably controlling. Like I want things my way because I like them my way. And I have a hard time like giving up that control. But I also think I can come to it 8 in a healthy way where I can stand up for my friends or like be the one in the group to like say something that everybody needs someone to say. Like I feel like I can show up in that way. So I don't know, like, but I kind of want to talk about the 7.
So classic. So classic. So I'm gonna find my resource here really quick, and that'll help us talk about the 7 from your growth and your stress point. Sound good?
Okay. Yes.
Okay. So I totally resonate with you that like as the 7 with a wing 8 and you're in a situation with your community, your small group of people. And you say what everybody else is thinking or needs to be said for everyone so that they can be defended, right? So that they can be protected. And you're absolutely right that like those are the great attributes of an 8. So I think you nailed it. Now when a 7 is at their best, you're going to actually move closer towards the 5, the investigator. In a good way.
I really feel like I don't have any 5 in me.
Okay. Well, let me double check that really quick as we go
Like,
through.
what do you mean? Like, what parts of 5? Because I feel like I don't know. Like, maybe just because I have a bad image of a 5 that I don't want to be anything like a 5. I don't know.
Did you have a 5 in your life at some point?
Yes, multiple.
Okay.
I don't like that.
Got it. So let's focus on us for right now, because it always starts with me. And the
Okay.
Enneagram is a self-assessment tool. So when we get into our shadowy side, the 2, the 8, we're going to project our shadow onto other people.
Mhm.
And that's one of the learning lessons about life, not just through the Enneagram, but like, okay, what I'm insecure about, what I have shame around, how do I not project that onto my partner, my friends, my coworkers, and my family members? Does that sound fair?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's talk about the 7.
Okay.
If I were to say, you easily become an accomplished achiever and a generalist who does many things, many different things very well.
Mhm.
Okay, so now we're talking about the upper levels of a 7. And this is how the
Mhm.
investigator shows up for you. You're knowledgeable about a lot of things, but you don't have to master them because
Yes, that's so true.
you're like a jack of all trades, master of none, but you do it so enthusiastically.
Yes.
And when you say it with confidence, people are going to believe you, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so that's how the fluid nature of the Enneagram works. Is we're taking the best attributes of a 5. And when you were talking about other investigators in your life, you probably saw their negative attributes and less about their positive attributes. And that's actually a tendency of an avoidant attachment, but we've already talked about your anxious attachment style.
Well, I'm definitely anxious avoidant.
Okay.
I mean, like 100%, but more, I think my avoidant, Jared's laughing. My avoidant comes in because I'm so anxious. So it's like the avoidant is a mask for my
Mm-hmm.
anxiousness.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's dig deeper into that through both the lens of the Enneagram and the attachment style. So, you said earlier that you're afraid of being too much.
Hmm.
And so an anxious attachment style will push away other people much like an avoidant so that they can leave the other person before they become too much. So that
Yes.
they don't have to feel the pain of rejection when the other person leaves them.
Yes.
And that's
Yeah.
how the anxious attachment style appears like an avoidant, but may not
Mm,
necessarily be an avoidant. Does that make sense?
mm. Yes. Yeah.
Are you ready to talk about the shadowy side of the enthusiast?
Yes.
Okay. So, um, I'm in a new relationship, and my partner is an enthusiast on the Enneagram. So we're learning a lot about each other from a 7 and an 8 lens, and it's been a lot of fun.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when the 7 is operating at their worst and in their shadow, they are very enthusiastic about being right
Okay.
and showing other people how they're wrong.
This is like so 100. This is 100% Leanna. Like we were watching the Bachelorette last night, and there's a moment where the Bachelorette like sort of like has to tell off all the bachelors because of like they didn't do something right or whatever. And I was like looking at Leanna, I'm like, this is like you all over. Like I'm like, you love telling people. Like I was like, you love giving people a piece of your mind in like dating situations.
Well, because I'm right.
Do you see how excited she got about saying that out loud?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so let's jump back to how personality types relate to each other through the lens of the Enneagram and the attachment theory, because I think we're bringing up a really good point here. And I shared what I shared about my current relationship because we talk about attachment theory and we talk about Enneagram very early on in our relationship because it's important to both of us.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And when she said, "Hey, Dave, I took my Enneagram test. I'm a 7 and a 1. I scored very, very highly on both of those." As opposed to my shadowy side of the 8, wanting to protect myself and not being vulnerable, I didn't immediately say through my attachment lens, the avoidant, of saying, "Oh, she typed as a 7, as a 1. She must be an unhealthy 7."
Mm.
I could not say that because that would be me projecting my shadow onto my partner. And that's where we get into trouble with our attachment styles. It would have been a deactivating strategy on my avoidant attachment side to push the other person away. So as opposed to saying, or as opposed to projecting my assumptions onto my new partner, I simply said, that's great. Let's explore that down the road when you're ready or when we get to know each other better. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to see that healthy version of myself through both the lens of the Enneagram and the attachment styles, to not immediately jump to conclusions about my partner because they took a personality assessment test. But as opposed to the choice that I wanted to make was to slowly progress forward to get to know the real person without their mask on. Or my projected mask of who they might be. And what happens, because we're taking this slow approach, I don't see any of that one. I don't see any of that like very, very much so shouting loudly, I'm right, you're wrong, here's why. We don't have that dynamic because we're not projecting onto each other.
This is so fascinating. What is, can you talk a little bit about, like, within each number? Let's see, hold on.
Sure.
Oh, there's levels of development. And I was listening to your podcast when you were talking about how you're a challenger and there's all these levels of development. So what are those levels, and like how can we learn those levels to get to know ourselves better?
That's a great question. And that's part of the tool that we use most frequently when we talk to people about the Enneagram. We've briefly touched on it before. When you're at your best, you're in your top third of the 9 levels of optimal health there. You're at levels 1, 2, and 3. And in your case, you're a jack of all trades, master of none, but you're enthusiastic about it and you're confident enough that people believe you that you're right. That would be you operating in your top level, top third of your optimal health. And then we have average after that, which is levels 4 through 6. And that's where we can be a little bit more egocentric. What are my needs that I can take care of for myself right now, today, this week, this month, and almost not ignore other people, but not put them first, which is a good place to be. It's healthy for us because it allows us to springboard back up into that optimal level of health where we're now giving back to our communities. But there's sometimes in our lives where we have to operate at the average because it can be exhausting to be at a 1. And it's very hard to stay at a 1 all the time. I'm not at a 1, not today. I'm challenging you guys. I'm poking at you guys. I might actually be in the average today, because I'm explaining a new experience for you guys, and I'm like, poke. Okay, here's your shadow. And that's not a great place for me to operate full time either, because it's not gonna gravitate positive energy to me and exude positive energy out. Make sense?
Not everybody likes that.
Oh no. When I get into my shadowy side and I start poking and trying to illustrate my point by putting a little bit of shame into my delivery, no one likes that.
Interesting.
And that's where I operate in my lower third of optimal health, levels 7 through 9. I may actually use that shame as a tool subconsciously, and less subconsciously now because of self-awareness that we've developed through attachment theory and the Enneagram. I don't want to repel people through my avoidant attachment by shaming them because my Enneagram type is operating at a low level of health.
So I'm wondering, I don't, like, just as a way of like helping illustrate this for our listeners, right? So Dave, can you talk about sort of, what the Dave that showed up in relationships looked like, before you started all of this sort of self-awareness work versus, and compare him to how Dave shows up in relationships today?
Man, you're asking the hard shadow question right now. And I'm 100% transparent and open and almost in almost excited to share this transformation. I was just speaking about it last night, actually, with a fellow member of my men's group. And in my 3.5 year relationship that I never expected to end because we enjoyed our time together, we had really good quality time together. Physical touch are my top two love languages. So both of those needs were being met for me without necessarily needing to be asked for. Because we lived together and we spent a lot of time together. We integrated our families. We both had children. My daughter's 18 now, so that's less of a determining factor when it comes to relationships. But old Dave in this relationship gave enough reassurance to my anxiously attached partner that she would stick around, but yet not come on too strong so that I would have to leave as an avoidant attachment style. Where it came to a head and where it came to an end is when there was betrayal within the relationship on not infidelity, thankfully, because that would be very traumatic for me, but more so just on a hidden a lie by omission. I did not get the full truth on a story. And after 3.5 years, our relationship ended because of that. But that's my Enneagram type 8 feeling betrayed. And then therefore my avoidant attachment style is activated and I ran. We gave it another 8 or 10 months of worth of attempts to repair the relationship, not living together, taking space, which is great for an avoidant to realize what the good things about the relationship were, but we were never able to repair. So that's old Dave, where if my biggest fear is an 8, being betrayed, being controlled, manipulated, and possessed, activates my attachment style, that's the old version of me. And I was becoming aware of these things. I was becoming aware of my shadow at that time because I'd found the Enneagram. And then my clients at the gym started to share attachment theory with me. And I'm like, aha moment for me. And then fast forward after 3 years of being single, that was an intentional choice of mine. I came close to a couple of relationships in that 3-year period with amazing, good quality women that just weren't the right fit for me at the time. Quite possibly because my avoidant attachment style was activated because of the betrayal or mistrust that the type 8 brought into the experience. But fast forward to today, where all this self-awareness and all this personal growth and development work has come to a point in my life where I feel very integrated as a masculine energy. And an integrated version of me looks like a healthy version of distance, a healthy communication, reassuring my anxiously attached partner. That's self-assessed. I did not say to my partner, "You're anxiously attached." I could not. We actually brought that information into our relationship, and that's why it's so beneficial for me to communicate with my partner. Hey, I've got a busy day on Wednesday. I won't be able to text throughout the day, but I'll see you that night because I'm looking forward to dinner. That doesn't sound at all like my avoidant attachment. It actually sounds very secure, and it feels very secure for me because I'm an integrated masculine energy and I've understood my personality type and my attachment style. But if my current relationship were absent of that communication, that would be my avoidant attachment showing up. Then it would activate my partner's anxious attachment, and she would start to be displaying protest behavior, which that actually looks a lot like clinginess. And then it goes back to the type 8 where controlling possessiveness and manipulation appears like clinginess to me. So the Dave that you're meeting today is doing my best, working my hardest so that I don't create deactivating strategies in my relationship. So it does not take me to the lower levels of health of my type 8 so that I can show up best for my partner, even in conflict, even if we have opportunities of growth. And conflict for an 8 is actually breeding intimacy. I don't shy away from conflict. I'll actually lean into it.
Interesting. Can you explain? I know we're coming up on time here. Jared has to leave right at 9:30, and I don't want to take your time more than an hour. But can you explain really quickly, what did you mean when you said that you gave just enough
Hmm.
reassurance, but like, were you like purposefully holding back because of like you resented the other person for being needing so much reassurance?
That would actually be quintessential push-pull in a relationship of an anxious and an avoidant. I was chatting with my men's group participant last night, and reassurance is a band-aid on a relationship. An anxiously attached person needs reassurance more often than the other attachment styles. Makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was giving enough reassurance by moving in with her too early, by spending
Mm.
quality time with her. I was narrating about wine nights at home. I don't drink anymore, which helps me stay in tune with my attachment style and my Enneagram type. It stops it before it rises as far as deactivating strategies go. So quality time was being met through wine nights at home, but the wine was numbing my avoidant attachment style to the point where I'm like, I don't feel like I need to run away because I just wasn't addressing what was truly going on in the push-pull relationship of an anxious avoidant trap.
Well, and it
And
also, like, when I hear that, it sounds to me, right, like, as an avoidant attachment style, right? Like, so everybody wants intimacy. Like, we want that feeling of connection and closeness. But if it feels too scary or overwhelming or threatening, then we run the other way. And so, if you can find this equilibrium where there's like, you're getting just enough intimacy, but it's not too close that it's going to trigger the like, oh, holy shit, I got to get out of here. Then you can kind of stay in this in between place where like nobody's really getting triggered too much, so you're not in this conflict push pull, but nobody's really getting their needs met either, but it's like just good enough. Yeah.
Spoken like a true helper. I love it.
I'm
So
glad I could help.
yeah, what
and
you're
see,
go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, and see, as an anxious attachment style, I'm listening to you talking and I'm like, I feel so abandoned.
That's right. That's right. So what Jared's talking about, to me, what comes up for me is tiptoeing in a relationship or being on eggshells in a relationship and having one foot out too. So if the
Mm,
anxiously attached partner is tiptoeing or walking on eggshells because they don't want to be too much for their partner and they want their partner to stick around, so they're going to hold back, not a healthy place for that person to be. And if the avoidant attached is um, has one foot out of the relationship, then that's going to keep the anxious partner gravitating towards the avoidant, which then
mm,
pushes the avoidant away, and it eventually takes that second foot out of the relationship because it became too much for the avoidant. So the best
Which
solution,
then, oh, sorry, go ahead.
the not the best solution, but the best choice for either an anxious or an avoidant attached style is to find a secure partner,
Hmm.
because the secure partner is going to intuitively know how to meet your needs on reassurance without being too often, because they won't run away from too frequent of reassurance like the avoidant. And the avoidant, with a secure partner, will have enough personal time and freedom and space and independence that they feel the security and safety in the relationship, and they will actually gravitate more towards the secure.
Mm.
mm.
So powerful. I think we better stop there. I could literally talk about this for hours.
Me too.
Um, I know. Do you have one final like thought of wisdom about all of the work that you do?
Oh, thank you very much. What I've uncovered over the past 3.5 years of personal growth and development, being intentional about understanding myself first, is that it's three major things. It starts with you. So the work that we're doing internally to look at our shadow, to peel back the layers of the onion, is so important to build a good quality relationship down the road. That comes into play in a relationship when conflict comes up. Oh, I'm feeling a little defensive right now. What is triggering me, not who is triggering me?
Mm,
And that
hmm.
comes
Mm.
from self awareness. Step number 2, I like these 3 steps. Step number 1, we just covered. Step number 2 is to set healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries can be different for a lot of different people. For Jared, it might be saying no to a new project at work because he hasn't completed the last 3. Because it has a hard time saying no to employers, and yet still wants to achieve and accomplish and get a good grade on the 3 projects he's already committed to. Especially if that new project is not on your responsibility job list. Healthy boundaries for me, since I have, as the type 8, my biggest fear is being vulnerable or open to hurt. Well, for a long time, my boundary was I don't text after 9 p.m. because I have 6 a.m. clients the next day. Well, I can't go into a new partnership and say definitively that I won't text my new partner back after 9. That would be unfair. And it would be my avoidant attachment style pushing my partner away. So healthy boundaries can be flexible, but they also have to be healthy for us first. And then finally, step number 3 is learn how to manage your own expectations. There's a difference between expectations and standards. Standards are, if you text me at 2 a.m., I'm not going to reply because I think you only want one thing. An expectation is I won't date anyone who texts me after 2 or texts me after midnight. I expect other people to know that they cannot reach me after midnight. Well, simply just by setting a healthy boundary there, I won't text back after midnight, shows the other person that they can't text you after midnight and reach you. That's why healthy boundaries help us manage our expectations.
So good.
That's awesome.
Tell my listeners where they can go find you, where they can listen to your podcasts and all the things.
Thank you very much. Yeah, on Instagram, we're at Believe, Be Real, Be Bold, one long word. You can find our podcast platforms there. Same name on all of your major podcast platforms, plus YouTube. Each week, we interview an expert, whether that be a counselor, a therapist, a speaker, an author, or dating coaches locally and across the world. We had the opportunity to interview somebody from Greece and France and Brazil. And we just love the community of authentic people that we're building who are passionate about learning more about their Enneagram type, attachment styles, and how love languages can come into play in there to create their ideal relationship and find their ideal partner.
Love that. Okay, well, Dave, thank you so much. This has been amazing. Maybe one of my favorite episodes. Just so eye-opening. I love this topic, and I can't wait for my listeners to go check out your stuff.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure to join you guys.
Thank you.